Everybody, welcome to our really fantastic, super awesome interview. I have one of the folks who I have been dying to get on a conversation and an interview with me. You know, I have been talking about, we just put out our Playdate review. I have been messing around with this gorgeous piece of hardware in the crib for about a couple weeks. And now we have one of the masterminds behind this gorgeous little device. We have Cabel Sasser, co-founder of Panic, rocking with me today. Cabel, how are you doing, fam? How's things going?
You know, it's a lot. It's good. Like, I can't complain. I you know, the Playdate journey has been very long, and so this really trippy thing right now where we're like right on the brink of shipping these things to people, but it's kind of like all the work is done. Like, there's like, I feel like we should be scrambling and, like, you know, hammering things together. Like, I don't know what, but we've been doing this for a really long time, one small step at a time. And now it's just like, oh, I guess we just tell them to start mailing them out. And they do. So that's where we're at today. Yeah. So it's pretty trippy, but like, yeah, so I'm good. I mean, you know, things are good. It's weird to feel like this is actually happening after a long time of wondering if it would actually happen. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I can just imagine, you know, it's one of those things too where this would be one of those kind of momentous occasions where you would pop the bottles in the office and get those things together. Now you popping bottles via Zoom and
right. It's not. I mean, you can drop the bottle emoji as many times as you want. It is not quite the same, and that's a weird part of it, right? I never would have imagined that the end of this super long adventure would be all of us sitting at home, like in Slack and on Zoom. But that's where we're at these last few years. Life just keeps you guessing. So yeah. Anyways, we'll have a virtual celebration. I do have a dream of getting everybody together in the office at some point to properly celebrate when we all feel like that is an okay thing to do. So feels like we're getting close, but I felt that before. I've been burned before.
I know. It's one of those things too where it's like everyone is like, so I feel like we are kind of close. And then you'll get that random tweet that's like, the CDC has just said that somewhere in X place, there is a new variant. And then they're like,
every time.
And then they bury the lead all the time, which is like, if you've gotten your boosters and you got your stuff, you're probably okay. But then it's like, let me throw this thing at you to make you freak the hell out first. But that is the way that all of that works.
Gotta love the roller coaster ride. Yeah.
The roller coaster is no joke. So, you know, I have been a fan of the work that you and the team do for a long time. It has been so cool to see, you know, just how far you have continued to kind of think about and push the ideas around games. Of course, being a software developer, you know, making a lot of Mac and iOS apps in the beginning layers of Panic, and now moving into more games related stuff. And also now making and putting into the space this ridiculously cool piece of hardware. What has it been like in the past couple of years talking through, you know, this journey that you've decided to go on where you're like, you know what? We had one of the most successful games in Goose Game. And now we're going to go and do something super wild and make our own version of this handheld hardware. What have those conversations been like for you and the rest of the team?
You know, Panic is as you know, like a pretty unique company. It's kind of hard to find a lot of parallels. And a big part of who we are and why we do what we do is that we've always been super independent, almost to a fault, right? Nobody ever invested in us. We didn't raise any series whatever funding. You know, it was just me and a friend, like, you know, right out of college, or actually didn't finish college, actually right out of 2 years of college. And this was weird because I was like, what other game companies have even been around as long as we have? And I just last night I looked it up, and Panic and Valve started in the same year, 1996. Wow. Yeah, so like, but a weird thing happened where we're not thought of as a game company until super recently, right? And so that's a strange thing, because for a lot of people that have are now hearing about Panic and about the Playdate, they have no clue that it's been almost 25 years of business, you know? So some people maybe think we're like a young, in fact, we get described as a startup to this day when people write about Panic. And I'm like, I think technically 25 years does not qualify us as a startup. But, you know, I'll take it. To me, I get what they're saying because we're trying new things all the time. And that I guess has the vibe of a startup. So like, I'll take that. That's kind of cool. But it's been, like I said, one small step at a time is kind of how we've always operated. And, you know, we made, as you said, Mac apps for a really long time and then iOS apps, and then kind of fell into game publishing through Firewatch. Yeah. Which is one of those threads because, you know, one of the co-creators of Firewatch is this guy named Jake, and he was a fan of our MP3 player for the Mac back when, you know, it's just like life is, if you're around long enough, all those threads of your life sometimes show up in unexpected and unique ways. And that's, I think, one of the coolest parts of our business and what we've done. We've been around for a while. And everything's connected. Not everything, but some things have connected. So, yeah, it's been a long process of just what do we do next? Yep. And, you know, games was a big what do we do next? And then it was like, we kind of got software figured out. Maybe we should try hardware. When I gave, you mentioned earlier, a talk at XOXO, I'm not a fan of public speaking. It makes me super nervous. And I probably practiced for a good 6 to 8 months before I gave that talk. But I was right in the middle of one of those big what next moments where it was like, I really need to figure out how to keep this interesting, how to keep pushing ourselves, how to keep trying new things. And we might have overdone it a little bit because Playdate is certainly the most advanced form of pushing ourselves and trying new things. It has been a long and difficult road, but like, we're still here. We didn't give up. And, you know, it feels like we made it to the finish line. So, yeah, that's a long answer. I'm going to give you really long answers.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
Super sorry.
No, I love it and I appreciate it because one of the things that I find amazingly funny about you saying, I don't like public speaking, I don't like those parts, is you just do it so well. You always come through with such a wonderful layer of your personality that comes through. And I think that's like, that's brilliant. I love that stuff is when you get a chance to do that. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, especially coming from that talk, was, you know, a running theme through that conversation was about perseverance, right? You talked about kind of being in the space for a long period of time and being here 25 years and seeing so many of those layers kind of change and the ideas about how do you come to work within those spaces. It feels like the Playdate as an entity, as a thing, is also a conversation about that kind of, not necessarily perseverance, but kind of battling against a little bit the very kind of strict rules that we have in the game space of like your console has to be X color, your device needs to be this big, it needs to be all of these things. And I just love how the Playdate bucks against all of that stuff, right? In a real way. Talk me through how some of the design choices came about for the Playdate in this way. You know, one of the first things people, and I remember seeing you at PAX West. It was the first time that we met, and you had started to kind of like talk about the Playdate, and I was like, "Hey, I'm from Portland. Hey, I'm from Portland." We had that kind of in that conversation. You were like, "Let me show you this thing real fast," and you pull out the Playdate, and you're like, "Hey, it also has a crank," and I was like, "What? What is happening here?" So talk me through that again, like bucking against all of those traditional things that we saw with the Playdate.
It kind of goes back to that having built a framework for freedom for ourselves. And I think that extends to every level. Freedom to take the company where we want and try new things as long as we can stay in business. I mean, big asterisk, right? We have to actually stay in business. So we can't get, you know, we have to think about that. But when it came to the design, like we knew we wanted to make a game system and we knew we liked this screen because the screen's really unique. It doesn't really look like anything else out there and immediately felt like something interesting. The rest of it, though, the real next step breakthrough was us hooking up with Teenage Engineering, which is this company in Sweden that makes. Actually, I got some of their stuff on my shelf back here. They make synths mostly and speakers, and have done some really interesting collaborations with big companies like IKEA. And that was another one of those things where sometimes if you are just around long enough and you have goodwill and you've always tried your best to do right for your customers and like, I don't know, it's maybe slowly building up karma, then we just cold emailed Teenage Engineering. We're like, hey, we want to make a game system. Like, are you interested in designing this or whatever? And they wrote back very quickly. We're like, oh yeah, we use your Mac app Transmit. We would love to work on, just like, okay. The meeting we had with them was definitely like when the Playdate project leveled up. It was Jesper is their designer over there. He's just a really talented person, and he threw out this render with all these unique ideas, including of course the crank. And the crank was one of those things where we're like, well, of course we gotta do that. How can you not? First of all, it feels great. Like,
it does.
Second of all, what does this mean for a game, right? Like, only one way to find out. That was one of those things, and I'm totally beating a dead horse on this topic, but it's like, there was no one to say that makes no sense, or why are you doing that? Nobody else does that. Yeah. Those questions are never raised because our brain was, we're still making Mac software and we're still publishing games. And so the whole thing was, whatever happens with Playdate, worst case scenario, we learned a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, probably spent a lot of money, but we learned a bunch of stuff. And for the next thing, we can do better or different or whatever. So there wasn't a lot of stress in those moments. It was just like, a crank? Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Which, a very, very lucky. I count myself very lucky to be in the position where we can do things like that and make those calls. And it wasn't, there wasn't like a big business plan. There wasn't a, it was just, let's just see where this goes one step at a time. And so, yeah, the design, the yellow, definitely like, that was kind of me and Jesper working together. This is really a deep cut, but I was I've always been a huge fan of the Famicom disk system, which very few people know about. Yep. But to me, the fact that Nintendo made a disk-based system for their Famicom and that it wasn't a success, I think is really interesting. And always in the back of my head, because Nintendo's still here, right? I mean, they've had their lumps. There's been a Virtual Boy. There's been a Wii U.
There was a sewing machine.
That could have been huge for them. But they're still here. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that all that kind of connected in my brain. It was like, first of all, that yellow is awesome. Yeah. we have this little device that you can put on any object and it reads the color straight from it. And I just slapped one of those on a Famicom disc and said, that's our yellow. Apologies to Nintendo. Please don't sue us for using your yellow. But it philosophically just felt right. And it's just so like just all that stuff snowballed, and it was all just fun, just like, let's try the different thing. Let's have a system that has a black and white screen, but also Wi-Fi. That's a really weird combination of things, right? That like our brains just don't really connect. And so that just happened more and more. And then, sort of the last phase of the project as of a couple of years ago, when we got it close and we announced it, and then it was like, we realized we had an opportunity to push people towards making things in a way that the other consoles can't do. Like, if you want to make a Switch game, there's a lot of hoops you have to go through to make that happen. You have to be pretty, not huge, but you got to jump through a lot of contracts. The publishing tools are super complex. To even get a dev kit, you're signing your life away and spending a lot of money. God, again, I'm giving you the longest.
No, I love this. This is perfect.
My last tangent on that thought.
No, don't run away from me, Cabel. No.
The problem is, I'll talk to you for 6.5 hours. We grew up at a time when computers could do anything, and then we suddenly found ourselves as Mac developers entering the App Store world, where you actually can't do anything, where you could have an amazing idea for an app, and Apple could say, no, that's not allowed under platform rules. That was in the back of our minds design-wise. How can we buck the trend on that a little bit? What does it mean to make a system that's truly open? It means we're going to be leaving a bunch of money on the table because we're not going to be taking a cut of everybody's thing. But do we deserve a cut of everybody's thing? Like, like our goal is to sell the hardware.
Yeah.
Like, all of these discussions, philosophical and otherwise, all sort of informed the design of this thing from both a hardware perspective and a software perspective. There are so many pieces to this puzzle. So I don't know if this is just like a therapy device for all of us.
Crank to feel better.
Yeah, yeah, slightly improve the state of the world, hopefully. Yeah. But I hopefully cool things come of it. It's really wild. But yeah. The crank, the yellow, these are key pieces of the puzzle. Yeah.
But I love that, right? Because it is that kind of feeling. And I have not met folks from Panic yet, but it felt like everything that has come through in the way that you've marketed it, the way you've talked about it, the way you even initially shared it with the world has that layer of fun, and that layer of fun also feels like a way that it's bucking the energy of the space in a real big way. But I want to go back to something you talked about, which was the ability to have so many different people be able to make something for this device. One of the things that blew my mind when I was reading through the press review kit was they were like, one, you'll be able to side load games onto this thing. And I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Where, because there's a layer of the process, right, in the way that you all are delivering games, which I want to dig into in a second. But I think
sure.
The idea that if you are willing to take the time to play around in Playdate Pulp, which is the space where you'll be able to build games online, that you can just give that thing, if you've made it, to a friend of yours and say, here's this thing I've had in my mind. Do you want to try it and play it and mess around with it? What was the conversation that went into that layer where you were like, we don't want to be the arbiters of the store. We want to be the folks who are giving you the ability to make what you want and make those experiences for other people.
Yeah, and not only can somebody make that thing in Pulp, which is like a browser-based tool, super easy to get into, to craft something, they could take that thing and put it on itch. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. I think that, again, philosophically, that was just one of those things where it just felt correct. Yeah. That we understand why consoles are locked down, especially, I should note, now that we've built hardware, I get it, because it's really expensive, and we don't actually make a lot of money on the Playdate, especially when you factor in how much it costs to make and the cost of developing all of the games. A regular console is sold at a loss, right? They're definitely not making any money on a PlayStation 5, at least for the first few years. And so I get it. You got to make that money somehow, and that is through a siloed, walled off store, and you take 30% of everything that everybody generates for your thing. Yeah. But when you don't have those expectations, and again, back to the being so fortunate and privileged to have built this place where we have the freedom to try things like this, you don't have to go down those roads. And so that was, I think, just a big thing for us that really wasn't even talked about that much. It's just kind of like innately, of course you'll be able to do this. Of course you'll be able to load your own game onto it if you want, and people can sell their own thing, not through us, because that feels like the right thing to do. That's how it should be. That's how computers were back in the beginning, like I said. I don't know, like, there's a lot of those branches where you have to choose between, I don't want to say greed, because it's not always greed, but I think you know what I mean. There's always paths where maximal profit versus what feels right. And I think that we try as much as possible to take the what feels right road, and I like to hope that we do, and if we don't, hopefully people call us on it and we can and I believe they will, hopefully, because they kind of know us at this point, at least in the app world, not so much in the gaming world. We still have to prove our worth in the gaming world, I think.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just feels fundamental. Why not have that freedom? And with a tool like Pulp, why not try to entice people into the world of being able to tell their own stories on a game system? That's a cool medium. Like, I can buy a canvas and paint a painting. I can, sit at a piano and write a song and distribute that stuff pretty easily. But games are a little bit trickier. PC games, super open for sure. But there's something special about loading a thing on a thing and then playing it on that thing. That was the smartest thing I heard. Do not quote me on that ever.
Back of the box quote for side loading.
On a thing and then playing the thing. It feels special. It feels special. And, there was a couple of tweets today that almost overwhelmed me with that we made the right decision. And that was... I don't have them in front of me, but somebody who was on the press preview of Playdate was, talking about how they have their preview or their review coming up, and please look forward to it. And then they said, and also, I'm going to try making a game for this thing. I've never made a game before in my life, but this, feels like the right place to try. I was like, oh man, it's happening. This is like the dream. This is what we wanted to see happen. If worst case scenario, if what we left in the world was a platform where people can tell stories in an easy way, then that is as good as it gets, right? What more could we possibly ask for from Playdate? So that's the dream, and I hope that happens more and more.
So one of the things that I want to ask you about, because I think this was also really kind of brilliant in the way that I think you all are rolling out not only distribution of the hardware but of the software, which is you've done this in this seasons kind of fashion where folks who will buy the Playdate and who will snag one, they will then get basically 24 games within that season that will roll out.
Yep.
How hard was the conversation about curating what this first season was going to wind up looking like for folks? Because I think one of the critiques I've seen from folks out in the world has been, so I bought this thing. I know I'm supposed to get 24 games. What if I get this game that I don't like? Right. Like, or what if the ones that are coming in are things that I'm not really vibing with? What were the kind of thought processes behind, that layer of rollout for Playdate?
It was interesting. So 2 separate challenges. The first challenge was just the challenge of getting 24 games made for the Playdate, which is a whole separate call we could do some other time. Yeah. Because that's a lot. That's a lot of people. But we call it programming the season. I think we think of it kind of almost like a TV season in a way. And our philosophy became, well, first it was just going to be 1 game a week. And then we got so much content and partially based on feedback from people early on that, like, let's dig deeper and find even more content for this thing and push ourselves a little bit harder when it comes to who we're bringing onto the season. So then we found ourselves with 24 games. And so once we hit 2 games a week, that's when we started to think, how do we roll this out? We tried to program the games counter to each other almost, with the idea that there will hopefully be something for everyone every week within limits, right? But let's not do 2 arcade shooters one week or 2 visual novels one week, right? Let's mix it up a little bit. I think you have to wait a week for your games thing is going to be challenging for people. I think that we're pushing people a little bit, and some people will respond well to that, and some people definitely will not. And so we have some tools in our back pocket that we can deploy if it seems like more people are annoyed than delighted. And we're going to play it by ear, because we got to try it and see how this goes. What is it like when you wake up every Monday and there's 2 games waiting for you? What does that feel like? Are you like, okay, I played them and now it's Tuesday and I'm ready for more? Like, this is stuff we're going to kind of feel out as Playdate's into the world. But it is definitely a grand experiment. And again, another one of those, why not, let's try it, freedom things, where I just loved that feeling that we just don't have very much anymore of, like, genuinely being surprised or delighted by something, right? Like, we know everything about everything before that thing, Here We Go Again, comes out, right? We know all the details. So we were trying to capture a little bit of that spirit. And the original dream, of course, was like, in our way too idealistic minds, we would get an order for X Playdates, we would manufacture X Playdates, we would ship X Playdates, and then everybody would be on the same schedule. That is not at all how the world works, even remotely. Manufacturing's not like that. They can only make so many a week. Plus, you got supply chain things where then it pauses for a couple of weeks because of a COVID outbreak. Like, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
Shipping is its own challenge. And then, synchronizing, that was we are holding on to that dream for a potential season 2 if we do that, which would mean there's already a bunch of people with Playdates in the world. So we could finally do that, right? Where everybody's on the same synced calendar. Is it 1 a week? Is it 2 a week? Is it every other week? I don't know. This is you've definitely hit on the most interesting part of this scenario. And I'm glad that we're trying it, but it will be interesting to try. The thing is, you'll only definitely hear from the people that don't like it. Sure. So we have to keep in mind, all this other stuff. But we're not closed-minded, and we are definitely, like with everything with the project, we adjust as we get feedback. So we're going to see how it goes. I'll let you know. Maybe we'll talk to you in a couple months.
Let me know post-launch and see where things go. But the thing I love, though, is it does feel like that energy that you just talked about, right? Where we're so used to being able to binge everything. Yes. And we're so used to being able to roll through and have a really, really weird expectation for that content to always be like that in that way. It's like, you know what it's like to make games at this point, and you're like, oh, so we made this game. Oh, so that thing that we made for about 2.5 years, 4 to 5 years, and that you finished in about 2 hours because you binged through it and ran through it, and now you're like beating my door because you want DLC. Like, it's all of those conversations, right? But I love, and it does feel like that. Like, I get excited anytime I get to go like, oh, that little blue light, the little kind of purplish bluish light that pops up on the device that tells you that something is being delivered. It's kind of just a really dope small touch to this device that I really love in that way. It feels special for me to be able to go and hit the button and then have that kind of opening animation show up there, which I think is really, really great. So that, I think you're nailing that part for sure. I feel a little bit greedy now because I've had them just roll through. I'm like, I wake up bam, 2 more games, bam, I got more stuff. For folks at home, that will not be the full experience that you have because we're doing it in the press review, but it is a really nice thing to kind of wake up to be able to have that stuff. Another thing that I wanted to bug you about, because I know you are a lover of music. One of the things that and a maker of music, one of the things I thought was really cool and a happy surprise was just how good the sound is out of this device. That was a thing that I had no expectation for. Where I was like, just the opening when you first start up the device, you get this really cool roll through of all these different animations and things that kind of welcome you into the experience. And I had it in whatever layer of volume it was on. I was like, holy shit, this sounds really good out of this really tiny device. How important was it to get that stuff right too? I remember you talking about on the Playdate podcast. About the clickiness of the D-pads and the feelings in the button, the way that the crank feels when you deploy it and spin it. From a hardware perspective, how fun was it to kind of get those layers right, especially on the audio side?
No, that's a lot of it, and it also ties in sort of to the teenage engineering part of the spectrum, right? That team really cares about audio. They definitely recommended this speaker to us. That was a part that sort of came from them, one that they liked. And it's critical. I'm really glad that you enjoyed that. We call it the first launch experience. That was kind of a late addition to the Playdate project. Maybe dropped last year, I think, but it didn't. It felt like you needed something to welcome you to this system. The animation and the art was done by this incredible studio called Chromosphere. I've always been a fan of Kevin Dart, who's an artist there, and his wife Elizabeth Ito is incredible. She did the City of Ghosts show for Netflix, which is just phenomenal. And Kevin's studio has done stuff for Carmen San Diego, and it just seemed like So it was one of those things where it felt like Teenage Engineering would understand what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And because there's a whole nother story, maybe that was on the podcast, about how we went to another firm here in Portland to try to design the Playdate, and they were just like, you're making a huge mistake. Please don't do that. Which, again, maybe is true. But Teenage Engineering understood immediately. Chromosphere was the same way. It's like, we need to do something cool. The animation here, like, oh, we got a guy that will love this, and 1-bit art will be really interesting, and then we should hook you up with our this musician we've worked with in the past in the UK named Simon Panrecker. Simon and I worked together on the music. I actually composed it and then sort of handed it over to him, and he sort of produced it and executed it, and it was just an incredibly fun collaboration. He did all the sound effects, which I think are really good on the Playdate, and all he is just he understood it 100% too. So this is an interesting thing. When you start to make challenging choices on something, like a black and white screen, like a crank, it almost acts as a filter for people that you want to work with, or even, if I can take it this far, people that might want to buy it.
Yeah.
You're setting expectations right out of the gate. Somebody that's like super into COD or Halo, or, which I love, but they're not going to be super stoked about a black and white screen. Maybe. Yeah. I'm generalizing, to be fair, and that might not be fair, but there is definitely, you're making strong choices, and that is going to set expectations with people about what you're trying to create. And I think that's always a good thing to do, because the people that are going to be on your side are the people that are immediately into your vision or immediately psyched about the thing that you're trying to make. If you try to design something run of the mill that tries to speak to everybody, then it almost can sometimes speak to no one, So I feel like that really blessed us on this project, and it really started with the crank and the screen and the yellow and Chromosphere, of course. That seems really cool, and it really helps when connecting with people. So we had a lot of lucky breaks all along the way, and I'm really glad you liked the sound and the music and the speaker. And it's another one of those things where there's parts of it that feel old, but then parts of it that feel new, right? I'm stoked for a game to do voice acting at some point, I think, because there's no reason why you couldn't have full VO on this thing. And that full VO coming from a black and white screen is really going to blow people's minds.
It's going to be nuts. It's going to be nuts. And there's a condenser microphone in this thing. I was like, what? Yes. Yeah. I was like, what? I was like, well, how do you even, proc that thing to do a thing? I don't even know how that works. But it's cool that that's a part of the way that and it's funny because you talked about that it has this retro feel, but also it is a very new device employing so many different technologies that we just take for granted all the time with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, all that stuff. And then seeing that was a part of that conversation too, I was like, ooh, because I was thinking about boogie loops, which is for me as a person who likes to make beats and stuff and all kinds of things. I was like, ooh, what's going to happen when this thing becomes a sampler that people are going to figure out a way to make into a device that you would be able to do stuff with that way. And it just, with the side loading layers and the way you're thinking about software and the way you're thinking about games and experiences, the coolest part about this from my time with it has just been I don't know what to expect. Awesome. And that has been dope because it has been. I'm
really glad you feel that way.
All these different versions of ideas, both old and new, that just work so cohesively on this device that I'm never thinking about, oh, this doesn't feel right for this experience and device. They always feel very meshed together in a way that feels really good. And it's been really cool to just have that experience throughout my entire time with the Playdate so far and moving forward and being really excited for not only new games, but new ways people just fuck with this thing and decide that they're
will happen.
And it's going to happen because it's also feels like it's a device that is speaking to developers who are really in that experimental space, right? Before we let you go, because time has flown by, gosh, it's gone so quick.
But I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
You are amazing. I am so hyped that we got a chance to hang out and talk today.
We got to do this more often.
Yeah, seriously, we do. For the folks who are going to kind of come to this experience for the first time, folks who are, Playdate curious, if you want to call them those folks, What are the things that you want them to kind of understand as soon as you get this device for the first time? What are the things you want them to kind of lean into with their first experiences with the Playdate?
Good question. I hope that people, at least with the season, approach it with an open mind. I hope that people can walk away saying, I have never played that genre of game before because I didn't think it interested me, but it arrived on Monday, and so I gave it a shot, and maybe visual novels are like my new favorite thing. Like that would be great. I would encourage people to have an open mind to try some of these gaming experiences that maybe they'd pass if they saw it in the, eShop or the PlayStation Store or whatever. I hope that people also give Pulp a try. I hope everyone gives Pulp a try because, again, we have a full professional SDK. I shouldn't say professional, but a coding SDK. But then we also have Pulp, which is all you need is your web browser, Safari and Chrome, and you can make a game or tell your story, whatever that is. I want to know your story. I don't know I don't care what it is. It can be funny. It can be autobiographical. I really hope that I just want to see what people make with that and to experience that feeling of making something in Pulp and then saving out that PDX file and then putting it on your Playdate and showing it to your friends, your parents or whatever. So I hope that people give that a shot. And I don't know, I just hope people just genuinely have fun. I hope more than anything else that Playdate can just brighten people's lives, even 0.5%. I would settle for that. I feel like we've all been through a lot, especially recently, and some more than others, but I don't know. Humans have a lot going on up top, and I hope that the simple joy of just sitting and spending a little time with something new that makes you laugh or smile or challenge you or whatever, just that essence of video games. I hope that can come through and bring a little bit of extra happiness to people's lives. That's the ultimate dream. It's a lofty goal. It's asking a lot, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, and we'll see how it goes.
I mean, look, if this one person on the planet in me is feeling amazingly good every time I've finished a session on Playdate, I am hoping that other folks get a chance to kind of engage with that joy in the same way I have. I'm even more excited to see again, like even just small things that I just was thinking in my head, especially because you have that really cool peripheral that you'll be able to snap your Playdate on and then like that's going to be dope when those get out into the world. I got to snag one of those when they're available. Yeah. But it's one of those things that was like me thinking after listening to your XOXO talk as well. I'm like, did you get a chance to relive and pull the audio player back from the dead and put it on that bad boy and have that amplified through the speaker? You can like do a retro thing like that.
You're joking, but a developer in Japan is actually making an MP3 player for this thing, and I told him he should call it Audion, and he thought I was kidding. But I'm like, no, seriously, please, you really gotta. It's got like waveform adjustments. You got your playlist and your cover art. Like, there are. Yeah, thank you for noticing that.
Oh, yeah, because I was like,
the circle is closing.
Right? Like, I just want to crank the thing to get to a new station. Like, I want to find some ways to like do all that stuff. Oh, it's gonna be so cool when people kind of play around in those spaces. Cabel, thank you so much for rocking with me today. It has been a pleasure. Getting a chance to not only get to know you through this work, but get a chance to see you and the team continue to just grow in all these fantastic ways. It's just so dope to see, especially Portland-based folks really get themselves out into the world in so many different ways. And it feels like this is another version of, again, I've been begging people to say, like, we need more game studios here in Portland.
I agree.
We need to figure out a way to bring the folks here to be able to do some of that work. So, well,
and thanks to you. And I just want to say it's been so fun watching you do new things and take new opportunities and grow. And I think you make this industry and planet a better place, and I'm really thankful that you're here. So thanks for everything.
You are amazingly kind. I think the best way to end out on a thing like this is to show one of our only collabs now. I got to figure out a way to get a Spawn on Me sleeve for one of these things. I was like, hey Cabel, can you send me a Playdate to go do a comparison across all the consoles? And Cabel was kind enough to send me this bad boy over.
The best.
And it was just like way before stuff was even in production. This is a long time ago. And he sends this thing over, and I was like, I gotta take a picture of this thing and compare it to the other ones. It was a blessing to be able to get you to do that. It was so cool to have so many folks like, well, that's what that looks like. It's that small. And it's just, I'm really hyped to see how things are going to go with launch and see where everything moves from here. So again, anytime you want to spot on the show, I'm totally down. We'll have to figure out a way to do this in person. I would love to do that.
Yeah, please.
And everybody go check out the Playdate. It is amazingly dope. Go check out the review. It's up on our YouTube channel as we speak right now. So go check that out. And we'll have more conversations with the rest of the Panic team and Cabel very, very soon, hopefully in the rest of this year. So much love to you, fam. We'll get to you soon. And everybody at home, again, thank you so much for hanging out and listening to conversations like this, stuff that you only get here on Spawn on Me. Make sure you go check out the Playdate. Make sure you give the folks on Panic some love. And we'll see you all very, very soon. Until then, peace!
See ya.